You might be caring for somebody at the moment that is going through hell, that is going through maybe mental health issues, maybe trauma, maybe illness. But I want to speak to the people that are living with somebody who is exhibiting suicidal behavior in that they're either talking about suicide, they're consumed with it, they've made a plan, or maybe they've even attempted. I want to speak to the people today that are caring for that person. And I want to speak to you directly and I want to speak to you openly and honestly about what my experience has been and where the wealth of my learning has led to me with this idea of can we fix somebody that we love? Well, the answer quite simply is no, we can't. Now, that's going to sound brutal and harsh, but I hope you stick around because I want to explore this a bit today. Um, I hate saying it. Like, share, subscribe, please. We'd love to get the message out there to more people. But let's just dive in and see what happens. Welcome to Mark My Words. Mark My Words is the story of my journey from a place where I was shattered to where I could live again. It's curious to me that in the space of a very short amount of time, I can have a number of conversations around a particular subject. And they might be people that are not in any way connected. And that's what's happened in this last week. I've had maybe 5 or 6 discussions from different people in different places at different times around the fact that they are caring for somebody that is exhibiting suicidal behavior. Now, let's talk about what that is. That's somebody that's either thinking about, talking about, planning, maybe even attempting a suicide. That's what suicidal behavior is. It's not necessarily the act of trying to end your own life, it's a whole complex amount of behaviors. And I want to draw out a little bit this idea that we can fix the people around us. Now, first off, we can't. Even a psychologist, a trained psychologist, psychiatrist cannot treat effectively somebody that they are emotionally connected to because they do not have that disconnectedness that you need to have to look at a situation without emotion. So, for example, when my brother calls me and says, Mark, I don't think I can go on, I am immediately caught up in the emotional trauma of that moment. My brother might end his life. What am I going to do? How am I going to do this? What can I do? Well, for a number of reasons, I can't really do anything. All I can do is tell him that I love him, tell him that I hope he sticks around, and that it would break my heart if he was to leave. And of course, I thank him for having the courage to tell me. That always comes first. Somebody comes to you with the worst imaginable scenario. Hey, my blah, blah is doing this and I don't know what to do. Your first immediate response should be to thank that person, congratulate that person, and acknowledge their courage. That's the first thing you should do. But what do you do if you are caring for someone? And maybe they've said some terrible things. Maybe they've said some harrowing things, things that, scar your soul. And I don't mean that flippantly. The first time my daughter said something that, it was like a sword slash to my heart. I didn't believe that somebody could do that. So I heard a story of a person that stood in front of his family and basically said, right, I'm just going to kill myself. Is that what you want? And of course, these people were like, no, that's not what we want. But where did they go from there? Where do they go in that situation? And it's again, I come back to this curious thing about how I've been told 3 or 4, 4 or 5 of these stories in the last, week and a half. It's strange. So, what am I trying to say today? You've got somebody in your world that you love desperately, but they are caught in this suicidal behavior. They can't see a way out, and they aren't asking you for help, but the fact that you know that this struggle is going on is consuming you, and it does. Somebody in a life or death scenario, we can't avoid watching it. That's why they do it on the news all the time. Oh, this happened and this happened and this happened and it's all bad. Why? Because we immediately go, hang on, somebody's in a life threatening situation. I am drawn to that. Not as a spectator, but just as a human, as a living human being. You're like, oh, what's going on? So when somebody in your orbit has threatened or is talking about suicide, you want to do something. You automatically, I don't, it's a human thing, I guess, that somebody in trouble and you can make a difference, you'll make that difference 99 times out of 100. You see somebody that's struggling, you can help, you'll help. Not because of for any other reason than the fact that you're there. You're the guy. But let's talk about this thing about fixing somebody that you love. The first thing to admit to yourself is that you can't fix them. You can't. The second thing is to realize that you are not responsible for their behavior. It's a big call, especially when you're talking about, a sibling or a child. You are not responsible for the headspace that they're in. You might have incidentally contributed somehow, but you are ultimately not responsible for that behavior. And that is the first trap in trying to help somebody is you feel responsible and you feel like you have ownership over that person's trauma, their behavior, and the consequences of what they may or may not do. Now, the fact of the matter is, I can tell you as a person that has attempted suicide, it had nothing to do with anybody else in the whole world, apart from the fact that I felt like I was letting everybody down, which was a lie. I was so consumed with my own sense of self-hate, of the darkness, the desperation of depression, the constant anxiety, the hyper awareness. I was just over it. I didn't realize I didn't actually want to die. This came to me later. All I wanted was the pain to stop. You're going to get caught in the trap of feeling like you need to fix this situation, that I love them, I've cared for them, they're somebody that I've looked after, I know them better than they know themselves, I can fix this. The fact is, you can't. You want to, but you can't. And that is the first step in being able to help them is stepping back and going, I am not the person to help this person. Now, all that being said, you still have a role to play. It's not hands off. Ooh, woohoo, I don't have to do anything. You can love them, you can support them, you can try and give them advice. You can let them know what their death would mean to you, how much it would hurt you. There is an expression I use. We do mental health training with year nines all across our city. Hundreds, thousands of students have been through this training. And one of the key messages that I like to leave the kids with is that friends can't fix friends. Because you know how teenagers are. They get wrapped up in each other's lives and they kind of feel responsible for their friends. And we try and teach them is that your friend might be going through some stuff. And yes, it's bad. What is your role? Your role, first and foremost, is to listen. But I use this adage over and over again in all the classes I go to. Friends cannot fix friends. You can't fix their problems. You aren't a doctor. Even if you were, you're too close. We've already discussed that. Friends can't fix friends. There's another adage that I like to leave the kids with because they always go, but. And that is somebody comes to you and they, I'm going to end my life, but don't tell anyone. And we say, well, okay, well, that's not tenable. I've been at a funeral with a guy a tough, strong guy, and he was sitting there weeping inconsolably. And I went over to him and said, mate, what's going on? We're all sad, but you seem inordinately sad. You seem sad to another whole level. And he said, mate, he called me the day before he committed suicide and he said he was struggling and I didn't do anything. That's the guilt that you live with if you believe that you could fix someone. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And as much as I could, this guy, I hope he's learned through time that it's not his fault. The bottom line is, as much as you love this person, you're not going to be able to be the person that fixes them. Be their coach. Be their cheerleader. Try to get them help. There's another little adage, and I don't think I finished the thought. It was that if a friend tells you not to tell anyone and you tell someone, like, for instance, my brother disappeared, we couldn't find him, we called the cops, knowing that he was going to be upset about that. He was going to be dark at me about that. I know, because he'd said, don't ever call the cops on me. I don't want to be one of those pathetic. He was mad at me, but I could live with that. I'd rather have them be mad at me than lose them. I don't want to get help. Well, you need to get help. Oh, I'm not going to get help. Well, I'm going to call an ambulance. Don't do that. I don't want an ambulance. I don't care. You are going to hurt yourself, and I cannot live with that. I am going to do everything I can in my life to keep you here. And if that makes you upset at me, I'm willing to live with that. I will not live with the guilt of not having done everything that was in my power to save your life. Let's pivot just a little bit. And I want to say this to the people that are living with somebody that's really concerned about losing their loved ones. This experience happened to me. There was a guy that jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And he said, as soon as his hand left the railing, he realized that he did not want to die. He knew it in his soul. This was not what he wanted. And he lived. Of the thousands of people that have jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge to end their lives, 19 people have survived. One woman did it twice, and she didn't succeed the second time. He interviewed as many of these people as he could find, and he told them of his experience. And he said, what was your experience? And every single one of those people that he got to speak to said that as soon as it was too late to go back, they realized that it was not what they wanted. For me, during my suicide attempt, yes, I was in a bit of a psychotic state, but as soon as I came out of that psychotic state, I realized that I didn't actually want to die. When I was lying in the ambulance, thinking that these were my last moments, I was like, this is not what I want. You might be living with somebody that has told you that all they want is for the pain to end. They just wanna die. They just can't live with it anymore. I would rather not let them get to that point where they're at the point where this is too late. Because as we talked about, the 3,000 people that have died, what if every single one of those people, as soon as they let go of the thing, realize that that's not what they wanted? I've spoken to a lot of people that have attempted suicide, and I've had not one person contradict me when I've told this story. I'm sure that there is an exception to the rule. There has to be. Nothing's ever 100%. You might be concerned about how they're living, how hard things are for them, how desperate things are for them. But you don't know. You can't know if death is what they truly want. And again, like I said, in my experience, I've not had one person say that, oh, I wish it had worked. Not one. You might be living with somebody that says that all they want is for the pain to end. Unfortunately, their mind is lying to them and they're saying that death is the solution to that problem. In most cases, I don't think it is. All they want is for the pain to stop. And by betraying their confidence, upsetting them, making them mad, maybe that's what it would take to save their life. And I don't know about you, but I could live with my brother never speaking to me again for the rest of my life, as long as he was alive and living a good life, any sort of life. This has gotten a lot heavier than I thought. I'm going to leave it there. That's going to do it for this week. I want to thank you for listening. Like, share, and subscribe, please. It helps us out. I don't get paid to do this. I don't want to get paid to do this, but I want as many people to hear these messages as I possibly can. It's all about that one person. Maybe I can speak to one person and maybe their life might be just a little bit different, better, because they've heard a message of hope. As somebody that has attempted suicide, I would just want to leave it with the fact, with this last fact. I have a friend that ended his life, and he was a guy that was much kinder than me. His name was Daniel. I know for a fact that if he, wherever he is now, passed away obviously, wherever he is now, if he knew the pain that was left behind, it would break his heart. I know that for a fact. I hope something in this has helped. As always, you can reach out if you want. Again, I'm not a clinician. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a guy that's been through a lot of stuff. And if you just need to vent, if you just need to get something out, just do it. Just send me a message. I'm more than happy to try to give you a response. But sometimes it's just that reaching out can be of help. So, hey, have a great week. I'll speak to you again next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to Mark My Words. I'd like to thank my producer, Meredith Brosnan, and also Torian, Kevin, and Lorraine. And I can't forget the band Adelaide, who allows us to use their song as our theme.